Hello, welcome to my second episode of my YouTube channel. Yes, what I want to talk about today is my favorite band, Yellow Magic Orchestra, as I am a big fan of Japanese music, and these guys right here, these guys are the most influential people in my entire music taste. And basically every artist that I really love and stuff, these guys have some involvement with. Like, these guys are amazing. If you're like into the city pop scene, if you're into like 80s Japanese music and all that sort, like you gotta give these guys more credit. Like, these guys were geniuses of their times. So, and I'll explain that. And how they influenced the 80s J-pop scene so magnificently. So this guy right here, this is Haruomi Hosono. Let's give him some color. There he is. That's Haruomi Hosono, and he has some interesting lore. He's definitely got some lore. So basically, if you ever watch Simple History made a video about this. But there was a Japanese passenger on the Titanic in 1912, and that man's name was Masabumi Hosono, the grandfather of Haruomi. And Masabumi Hosono, he got lucky. He got on a lifeboat. He survived the Titanic, thankfully, and through the butterfly effect, probably led to this guy being a musician. But when he got back to Japan, there was many rumors spread through tabloids that he was pushing women off the lifeboats, pushing women and children off the lifeboats, that he didn't care about women and children, and that he only made his own way to survival off of just taking other people's seats, which was unfair. I think there's been more documentation since then, especially with his diary, that shows that he actually survived pretty fairly on the Titanic, even though there was that famous women and children only rule when it was sinking. But based on his documentation, and I think there's some documentation around it. At least I think there is. I've heard something about it. He actually survived barely, but in Japan, he was supposed to go out with a hero's death, and he didn't. So Masabumi Hosono caused his family to lose a bunch of honor in Japan, and kind of almost reminds me of Shogun a little bit, which I talked about in the last episode. But Hosono, he grew up in this Hosono family, which had lost its honor due to Masabumi Hosono surviving the Titanic, but that didn't stop him. And starting in 1969 and in the early 70s, he started the formation of his career. He began making folk rock music and somewhat country music, more country music in his solo kind of albums, and then he worked on kind of folk rock music with a band called April Fool. And then after April Fool, later in the 70s, he worked with a band named Happy End, and then later after that, Tin Pan Alley. I've listened to some of the songs from these bands. It's not particularly my kind of cup of tea, but it's still pretty good stuff. But he started making his single individual albums during that time, and one of them being Parieso, which is, he loved making these kind of satires on Western exotica music. Like, it's a sort of music where it's just like it's a very idealistic view of other cultures, and very just like kind of interprets cultures wrong. I don't know. He kind of wanted to make a satire on the exotica genre, and that's what he was like doing with Parieso and stuff. And that's when he got with Ryuichi Sakamoto and Yukihiro Takahashi. I love Yukihiro Takahashi. He's super cute. He's one of the few guys that out there in this world that I would go gay for. But that's when he started working with these guys, and we're gonna go right to Yukihiro Takahashi before we hit him. So Yukihiro Takahashi, his story is pretty simple. He didn't have the same Titanic lore that Haruomi Hosono had, but Yukihiro Takahashi, he started making music, rock music in the 70s. He started with the Sadistic Mika band, which performed in England and stuff. They kind of went around the world. And then after that band broke up, he went and did some music for a band called the Sadistics before eventually working on the Pariso album, which would bring these guys together. And then finally, Ryuichi Sakamoto, he's a legend. He's a pretty wonderful dude. He's had the most college education, I think, out of the three. He started studying at the University of Tokyo, I believe, something like that. Some university in Tokyo, I think. It might have been the University of Tokyo. But he began studying there, and he got a bachelor's and a master's in just music in general. He was trained in classical music, and he also studied a lot of music from around the world. That was a big part of his studies, was studying music from all different continents: Africa, the Americas, Asia, Europe. He just studied a lot of ethnic music, and he became very well versed in music. And eventually these guys came together and they formed the Yellow Magic Orchestra, and which is just, I think, what really, I think they were the most, I think the Yellow Magic Orchestra, I'm just gonna say it, were the most influential people in um in the city pop 80s Japanese music scene, which I hold very much dearly. I love 80s Japanese music. I can nerd out about it all day. And they came together, Pariso, formed Yellow Magic Orchestra, and basically they started in 1979 with the Yellow Magic Orchestra, and in the late 70s, 80s, and so what, the early 80s when they're most active, there was a lot of electronic music instruments being produced at that time, such as synthesizers, Moog synthesizers. Synthesizer is a very hard word to say. Um, but those are basically electronic keyboards. And also, they worked with rhythm machines. And these technologies were very new at the time. And they were based off of the band Kraftwerk from Germany, which a Western audience might be more familiar with. Although, when my parents bought this album for my birthday, I told them, "Oh, Y.M.O is the Kraftwerk of Japan," and they didn't know what Kraftwerk was. I was like, "Oh, I thought that was more of a Western known thing." Kraftwerk was a big electronic band in the 70s, 80s, and I think they still are somewhat active. They've had a lot of different band members, but these guys, they base themselves off of Kraftwerk. And honestly, I've listened to Kraftwerk and Yellow Magic Orchestra, and Yellow Magic Orchestra, I think, kind of tops it out. Because with the electronic music they made, it was more poppy, it was more rhythmic. There was just a lot more going on, I think, with their music. I've heard music experts I've heard music experts say that Kraftwerk is better and so on like Reddit, but I've always thought Y.M.O was a lot better. I just think they produced a lot more unique stuff, and they experimented a lot more. Their music was faster, had more beats to it. Just was generally just, I think I like the production of Yellow Magic Orchestra music more than I did with Kraftwerk music. But Kraftwerk is very talented. Um, and these guys kind of split and came back together throughout the decades since 1979 to 2023, when I'm not going to get in spoilers right now, but in the late 70s and the early 80s they were most active, and they were at their highest popularity, and they were actually the most popular band in Japan, getting some albums on #1 charts on this thing called Oricon or something, and they apparently beat records on it. I forgot what the record specifically was, but they had like two albums on the Oricon charts at the same time that lasted a few weeks, and that was apparently like a big record for Japanese musicians and stuff. And they experimented a lot with different kinds of music. In their earlier albums, it was more electronic based. There was a little bit less vocals. There was still some, but later they kind of got more into vocals and stuff with their music. This album here, which I think they produced in 1982, 1983, I think. Maybe there's a date on the back. This is the back of the album, by the way. Um, they produced this in looks like May of 1983. This album was released, and this album is my favorite because it's the poppiest out of the whole bunch of their albums. My favorite song is the first song on this album, Kimi ni Mune Kyun. I adore that song. I adore its music video. It's probably my favorite song because they're just being goofy with it, and it's like it sounds it's very catchy, um, and it just they're basically goofing around in the music video. And to explain the song best, it's like goofy boy hours. That's the vibe. It's like being goofy with the boys. That's like what Kimi ni Mune Kyun is. It's like being goofy with the boys, raising up girls. That's the feeling of the song, and it just it cheers me up. It does, and but there's some more electronic based music in here, but this is generally their poppiest album. So that's why I like it best, and that's why I've been holding it the entire video. Um, but yeah, they produced a lot of albums, did a lot of stuff with electronic music and stuff, and they eventually ended when their band broke up for the first time, just so they could go on with their different ways. They really had no drama. These guys were friends throughout life, but they wanted to split up just because they're kind of maybe getting tired of each other with working on the same projects together. But when they split up, they produced a movie called Propaganda, and it's a really interesting movie. There's a lot of interesting sets and scenes going on. It's kind of confusing. It's very artistic. It's very aesthetic. It's there's a lot of different aesthetics. And if you're editing, you better show some screenshots from the movie because it's a very aesthetic movie. So yeah, and the movie's interesting because at the ending of the movie, and this is gonna sound very sussy. It's gonna sound very sussy baka. It's gonna sound very sussy Among Us. At the end of the movie, they dress up as Nazis. They do their final concert, and then the concert venue they burn it down, and they go along with the fire and disappear, and then that's the end of YMO. Like, they apparently related the end of their band being the downfall of the Nazis, apparently, but they're not like that. Ryuichi Sakamoto is pretty liberal, so they're not like that. They're not weird, but but that's how they ended it off, and they destroyed a whole concert venue, and then the last scene was very poignant. I think that's the right word. And it's with this kid. You follow this kid throughout the movie while he's exploring all these scenes, these strange kind of mystical wonders with the three band members. And the kid shows up at a beach. He sees a woman in the distance. You also see this woman throughout the movie. And this woman's kind of a rebel who rebels against YMO, the YMO Nazi regime, I guess, in the movie. And she teaches the kid how to throw Molotov cocktails. And she's standing at the beach mysteriously, and then she vanishes. And then the kid runs off into the land. And then it plays this music, and I forgot the specific title of the song, but it's a song I've listened to just outside of the movie, but it's the music sounds very like liberating, like something's over, like it's like a giant war ended, and now this kid can go live out his future. I don't know why YMO ended up off their band that way, especially since they kind of would get back together and depart several times again. But that's how they ended it off. They saw the end of their band like being the downfall of the Nazis. So I don't know. I don't know why they chose that, but it's really cool still. And I know they're not like that. Ryuichi Sakamoto, like I said, he's very liberal. But yeah, these guys, 80s, 70s, they were very influential in adding synth pop, electronica, and all this stuff to Japanese music. And I just want to edit this in YMO was also really big in, they're revolutionary in video game music. They were kind of the first guys to have the ideas of like sampling video game noises and stuff, which is more popular these days. But these guys were like the first dudes to do it. And Haruomi Hosono actually produced an album called Video Game Music, which was like a new thing for its time, but which is really revolutionary because I think a lot of those sounds, a lot of video game noises, are more sampled nowadays, especially in internet music genres and the such. But these guys were the first to do it. And actually, I would say I actually listen to their solo work. The reason I appreciate YMO a lot is not that I'm always listening to YMO. I actually listen to a lot of these guys' solo work or the music they helped produce, and they seem to be collaborating with everybody, especially Haruomi Hosono. I'm just gonna list off like a bunch of artists he's worked with. First off, he's worked with Tetsuo Yamashita and Shigeru Suzuki. They worked together. They produced an album called The Pacific, and I think they worked a bit with each other more. He also worked with Maria Takeuchi, who's known for her Plastic Love fame. Plastic Love is actually on her album Variety, which is her first album that she made after being done with working with Haruomi Hosono and other fellas. So he worked with her. He's worked with Chisato Moritaka. I think he's worked with Seiko Matsuda. He's worked with Miyaru Koshi. He made a really good album in the 90s, Swing Slow, one of my favorite albums with Miharu Koshi. Miyaru Koshi's just wonderful. I love her music. She deserves a lot of credit. In the 70s, she produced like really good poppy stuff with piano and stuff, and then like 80s, she just became very avant-garde, and I love Miyaru Koshi's avant-garde music. And he really, the whole YMO actually worked with Miyaru Koshi at times, but he produced some music with Miyaru Koshi. He's also produced music for Jun Togawa from Suki Suki Daisuki fame, kind of during her first songs when she was working with a band called Guernica. He didn't produce Suki Suki Daisuki, but on the Suki Suki Daisuki album, which is just a stunning album, very avant-garde, very crazy. Jun Togawa is kind of crazy. She's like yelling, and she's a really interesting artist. She goes from this screechy kind of kawaii voice, and then she's like goes to this deep voice, like ooh, like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how she has that vocal range, but she's crazy, and she made some really good music. But on the Suki Suki Daisuki album, Haruomi Hosono is actually given a special thanks directly on the cover, because that's how much she had an influence on helping her out with music and stuff. I'm eating cereal right now, but added on to Jun Togawa, who had some help with Haruomi Hosono, she actually inspired Suzuka from Atarashigako. Suzuka once said that Jun Togawa is one of her favorite musicians. And funnily enough, I've actually gone to an Atarashigako concert. These are some of my photos here. So yeah, it's kind of a whole cascade butterfly effect that YMO has. So maybe I'm probably stretching it, but man, I feel like YMO is the best band to ever exist. And then there's also a really good album. It's kind of a one-hit wonder, kind of a really niche artist that only produced this album, but Chiami Manabe, she had an album. She was kind of an idol who had one album, but Haruomi Hosono with Akiko Yano, which we'll mention later, they really went out on that album. They really made some interesting stuff on that album. It kind of has a weird mystical UFO vibe, that album. It feels like you're it feels like you're Kermit the Frog working with the SCP Foundation, and you're trying to hunt down a UFO, and you're listening to J-pop. That's what that album feels like. And they worked together with just so many artists, these guys. And also Ryuichi Sakamoto, he's collaborated with a few artists too. He's collaborated with Akiko Yano, who actually became his wife for some years. Akiko Yano she was a pretty good artist too. She mainly she didn't participate in studio recordings, but she did work on their live concerts and all that. So she was very good at what she did. And they actually had a daughter together, Miyu Sakamoto, who I follow on Instagram. Miyu Sakamoto is also a pretty good musician. I don't listen to her that much, but I know she's pretty talented based on the music I have listened to. But yeah, he's worked. His Ryuichi Sakamoto married a pretty good musician. They eventually divorced, but they those two uh, had a really talented kid with each other. So yeah, Akiko Yano, Miyu Sakamoto, also tied into this. And also, he's worked with Seiko Matsuda, also like Haruomi Hosono. He's worked with Yukiko Okada. There's a picture with him with Yuko-chan. R.I.P. Yuko-chan. We all miss you. I hope to go to Tokyo one day and visit uh, her spot to honor her. Um, but yeah, he worked with Yuko-chan, and these three going into generals, they all worked with kind of with Taiko Onuki. You might know Taiko Onuki from Me Gone or 4 a.m., that popular song with 48 million views. And you want to know who arranged 4 a.m., that song with 48 million views that a lot of city pop people love? Ryuichi Sakamoto arranged 4 a.m. By Taiko Onuki. So that was him. That was him. Like, these guys make good music. And they've also worked with another artist I've liked. They've worked with Tomoyo Harada, who's known for being from the movie Tokiwo Kakeru Shoujo. Tokiwo Kakeru Shoujo. Yeah, and which is a movie I've watched and really loved by Nobuhiko Obayashi. And Yukihiro Takahashi has actually been in a Nobuhiko Obayashi film also called Poison d'Avril, which I haven't watched that one yet, but it looks like a really good movie. So they're also tied with Nobuhiko Obayashi, and also they also did stuff with Hayao Miyazaki. Haruomi Hosono actually did some of the soundtrack for Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. These guys are like everywhere in Japanese music. That's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying they're so influential, and they've done a lot of good solo work. I love the solo work of Haruomi Hosono. There's a specific album I really like. I'll probably put the text and picture of what it is, but it's very relaxing. It's like that album Plantasia, but it's just even more like, oh, you just feel like a plant relaxing when you're listening to that music. You feel like a plant getting rained on in a peaceful spring cloudy day, just surrounded by all other plants. You just feel like a part of the earth when you listen to that album. And I just, that's one of Haruomi Hosono's works. I love it. Ryuichi Sakamoto has done a lot of soundtracks. He did the soundtrack for the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Revenant, which Leonardo DiCaprio, I believe, got an Oscar for. He's also very famous for working with, what's that guy's name? I'll probably put his name right here. But he worked with this guy, which he's pretty popular in America, actually. And when Ryuichi Sakamoto died, his account actually posted a dedication to Ryuichi Sakamoto. And they worked together on a movie called Merry Christmas, Miss Lawrence. And that's the song with the same title of that Ryuichi Sakamoto made. That's perhaps one of his most famous songs. It's a classical kind of piano song made specifically for the soundtrack of that movie, but it's gained a lot more popularity outside of just being a part of that movie. And also, he did work on The Last Emperor. He actually starred in The Last Emperor. Last Emperor, the movie's kind of, it's good at times, it's also kind of mediocre at other times, but holy moly, the soundtrack, especially when when Wenshu divorces Puyi, the music he plays, the music he arranged that plays in that scene is beautiful. It's called Rain. It's stunning. Like, it's like, whoa, like, you just feel like, and it gives the vibe of the scene that Wengshu is being liberated from history, while Puyi and Wanrong are still trapped in the prison of history. I don't know how to explain it. I think that probably explained it best, actually. And Yukihiro Takahashi, he wasn't as strong with the collaborations or uh, as the other guys, but I'd still respect his solo work and stuff. He just produced so much good stuff. I love Drip Dry Eyes, and the album Neuromantic that goes along with. Beautiful album. Just, I don't know. It's very, especially the music video for Drip Dry Eyes, such an aesthetic. And also, I like his recent, more acoustic works throughout the years. Just really good stuff. I listened to an album called Life Anew and Mr. YT, which I think he produced in the 90s and 2000s. And just I love his acoustic work. It's very it's very soulful. It's very soulful. And I'd say, I've been thinking about it. I would say Ryuichi Sakamoto is like the head, the brains of YMO. Haruomi Hosono is like the beating heart of YMO. And Yukihiro Takahashi, he's the soul. He's the soul of YMO. And they also, I have to mention more collaborations. Haruomi Hosono, at the start of the band Pizzicato 5, one of my favorite bands, they were very important in the Shibuya Kei scene. They actually kind of developed the genre of Shibuya Kei. It was this genre in the 90s that kind of combined Japanese pop music with kind of a 60s bossa nova kind of vibe and other with another mixture of genres. Maybe I'll list some down here. But just generally, just I love Pizzicato 5. And at the start, Haruomi Hosono actually produced one of their first songs, being the Audrey Hepburn Complex. He produced that. Eventually, the band members would transfer a bunch around. Yasuhiro Konishi would stay on the Pizzicato 5, who worked on that on the Audrey Hepburn Complex with Haruomi Hosono. But eventually, the Pizzicato 5, going off of Haruomi Hosono, they eventually got a girl named Maki Nomiya to be their vocalist. Wonderful musician. Maki Nomiya, I love her. She's my celebrity crush. I don't care if she's 60 years old. She's my celebrity crush. And Maki Nomiya and Yasuhiro Konishi, they started with that band. Their band Pizzicato 5 started with the work of Haruomi Hosono and stuff, partially. And they eventually became this really amazing band in the 90s, just producing all sorts of great Japanese pop music. And they were also one of the most popular bands in Japan during their time in the 90s, just like how Y.M.O was so popular in the 80s. Yeah, I wanted to mention Pizzicato 5. I love Pizzicato 5. That's like, I would say if I was ranking all the bands I like in a tier list, I would say Y.M.O would be the S tier, and then Pizzicato 5 would be right next to it in the S tier also. I love Pizzicato 5. And then I believe Haruomi Hosono also worked with a musician called Yan Tomita. Oh, and Yan Tomita, I'm not as familiar with him, but he produced an album with Caroline Novak and Kim Zuzi called Doopy Time, which was a space age fictional album that was supposed to illustrate, I guess, kind of space age futuristic music, kind of experiment around with it. It's called Doopy Time. And Doopy Time is the most quirkiest, kind of the most autistic album I've ever listened to, but it's very magical. I love Doopy Time, one of my favorite albums. And Haruomi Hosono actually worked with Yan Tomita, who produced that album. I don't think Haruomi Hosono wasn't involved with it, but he did work with Yan Tomita on some of his works. And Doopy Time, I highly recommend Doopy Time. It's a band with only one album. The Doopies were like a fictional kind of band. I don't know how to. It's really weird, like a fictional band that's actually put some work out, but Doopy Time, great album, highly recommend. So they're kind of tied into the whole Y.M.O scene. I'd say they're kind of very similar to what Y.M.O was doing with the experimentation of music and stuff. Doopy Time is just a solid album, solid 10 out of 10. Yeah, Caroline Novak, she's really the soul of that album. Yeah. Also, to add on to collaborations, these guys all worked with the artist behind Toate, which I love. I love Toate. He's got a very good Y2K vibe. Um, he made a song called Butterfly, a very Y2K song with a very Y2K kind of video. Just really aesthetic stuff. I just had to add that in. These guys all worked with Toate, so yeah. But yeah, these guys were legends of Japanese music. I love these guys so much. Just every musician, every like I said, every musician I like, were tied to these guys, and every and like you might not believe me at the start of this video, but these guys were the best. These guys were the most influential in 80s Japanese music. And also I think in the Wikipedia I read that Joe Hisaishi, if you know Joe Hisaishi from all the Ghibli films, he was also inspired by YMO. But I don't know if they directly worked with each other at any of the point with any of the band members, but he was also inspired. Like every Japanese musician that I love and know, they either worked with these guys at some point or they were inspired by these guys. And I just think that's just absolutely magical and wonderful. And if you want to find a lot of these guys' music and the artists they also work with and stuff, go check out the Alpha Music YouTube channel. I love the videos they post on there. They got Suki Suki Daisuki on there, Kimi ni Muna Kyun, and just a whole collection of other great music videos on that YouTube channel. Alpha Music 1969. Yeah, Alpha Music. So yeah, go check them out. And also Ryun Senkai, they posted a music video on that channel too. Go check out Ryun Senkai. I love you, Ryun Senkai also. Um, but yeah, these guys basically are the most influential Japanese musicians out there. And after James Cameron put out the Titanic, Hosono's family honor was actually restored because people went back to the story of Masabumi Hosono in Japan, and they learned the truth of Masabumi Hosono and how he was actually a pretty decent guy who survived in a fair way. And so Hosono, I think he already got his honor back with the great music he's made, that he made in the 80s, but he officially got his honor back after James Cameron put out that movie. So thank you, James Cameron, for giving Haruomi Hosono his honor back. Thank you. They continued to work with several musicians. There's Instagram posts with Yukihiro Takahashi hanging out with Taiko Onuki, and if you look at their Instagrams, you can see that they were definitely hanging out with other musicians. Actually, one of Haruomi Hosono's latest posts, he actually took a picture with that one guy from One Direction, who I forgot the name of, but we'll put the name. No, I remembered. Harry Styles. He posted on his Instagram a picture of him hanging out with Harry Styles. Every girl today loves Harry Styles, and Haruomi Hosono knows him. These guys are everywhere. These guys are everywhere, and Haruomi Hosono knows Harry Styles. Harry Hosono knows Harry Styles, and Harry Styles knows who Haruomi Hosono is. That's what I'm talking about. These guys inspired a lot of musicians. They inspired Harry Styles. Mac DeMarco knows Haruomi Hosono. That's a big indie artist. He inspired Mac DeMarco and Harry Styles. So, you tell me these guys are just like, you don't know who these guys are? Every good musician knows who these guys are. Like, these are real dudes. But sadly, they also, in 2023, Yukihiro Takahashi passed away. Probably the most hard-hitting kind of celebrity death I've ever felt. And then 2 months later, Ryuichi Sakamoto passed away, which RIP to those two homies. And Harumi's still alive as of recording. So I hope Harumi lives a long life. I hope I get to maybe meet Harumi one of these days. But yeah, so RIP to these two wonderful men. But yeah, that was everything I want to talk about with YMO, I just had to talk about a lot with YMO. And now I'm going to have to edit this video and everything. But yeah, that was YMO. That's why I love YMO. That's my reasons. That's why YMO is my favorite band. So yeah. Before I go, I have a bunch of playlists on my YouTube channel if you want to check out my music taste, if you want to check out the music I like. The playlists are pretty big. I have a current playlist which only has 100 videos on it, but I also have 4 other playlists with 5,000 videos each, with 20,000 videos as a whole. So if you want to go delve into like music like this and other interesting music from around the world, I highly recommend going and checking out my playlist. It's kind of narcissistic. I'm kind of self-marketing, but go check out my playlist if you are more curious in music like this. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hearing about my love for YMO. Thank you.